Explorer Live. I am continuing my reading of English Journey by J.B. Priestley. My throat is, my voice rather, is a little constrained this morning from the week of high active chatting on the Vogue show that I do in the evenings. I can feel it taking its toll. So I'm going to try and keep myself... I nearly said liquidized then. What's the word I'm looking for? Liquidized. Yes, well, you know what I mean. I don't mean liquidized. Liquidated. Liquidated? Lubricate. Thank you. Lubricated. This morning I have some tea, which I'm going to drink as I read. Good morning to Sarah. I'm going to read... I'm falling to bits already. I haven't even started. I've got, what is this? Darjeeling tea, one of Tea Pigs. This was sent in by Linda Kane, and it is, I thought it was two things. Darjeeling Earl Grey, but I am having it with some milk. Oh, it's bloody weak. It's very, very weak. I haven't got a spoon in here, so I'm going to use my fountain pen. Maybe I shouldn't have had it with milk. Oh well. We will do our best. Right. Yes, that's very weak. We will see how that goes. Unfortunately, I have spilt some on the desk. Yes, that's the weakest tea I've ever seen. So much for Darjeeling. Let's have a taste. Nice, actually. Darjeeling with a bit of bergamot in it. Audrey Forbes Hamilton, good morning. Graham Roffey, morning. Just watched the camper van video. Thank you very much. Andy Stacey, Judith, Mike Stevens, and Nigel Sadler. Howdy to you guys. So we're going to read another bit. I'm really enjoying this book. As an insight into England in 1933. However, J.B. Priestley does come over as a very curmudgeonly type of character and somewhat of a snob, which adds, I think, particularly now to looking back at it. Yesterday there was some hilarious moments in his diatribe, and it was very enjoyable. Morning to Perry. Hope you're all well. The news is full of doom and gloom and more worries and concerns and things. So hopefully take our mind off things. Jay Blake, good day from Brisbane in Queensland. Good day to you, sir. And thank you for joining me today. So I'm just carrying on reading J.B. Priestley's English Journey, and let me, for those people who have no idea what this is about, English Journey being a rambling but truthful account of what one man saw and heard and felt and thought during a journey throughout England during the autumn of the year 1933. And it's very much worth remembering this is from 90 years ago. In England, prior to the Second World War, still reeling from the financial difficulties of the First World War, and a time, as you will see, where clean air and energy production was a different process. And in today's episode, J.B. Priestley is going to the Black Country, places like Wolverhampton and that sort of thing. Scudo Camper, not just camping. Good morning to you. Hope you are well, Austin. And Philip Hammond, good morning. So yeah, this is for those who've just joined. This is purely just a reading that I've been doing every day at 9:30ish. Time is getting on, so better get on. So here we go. He was in Birmingham, but he's moving from Birmingham. And I hope you enjoy it. I'll try not to stumble over too many of the words. From Birmingham, I went to have a look at the Black Country, which lies to the north and west of the city. This notorious region was strange to me. Now I have seen it, but of course it is still strange to me. You have to live some time in these places to understand their peculiar qualities. All I can do is to offer a few sketches, probably not at all accurate, nor free from a certain subjective colouring, for, in retrospect, it is difficult to disengage the scene from the mood. But perhaps that doesn't matter. The record of a journey of this kind may be more important if it chronicles a succession of moods than if it captures a succession of scenes. Here, I think I ought to say a little more about myself. It happens that during the last few years, I've been away from the industrial districts and have spent most of my time in far pleasanter places. But the first 19 years of my life were passed in the industrial West Riding, in the shadow of the tall chimneys, and even yet I'm not fully fastidious about my surroundings. So you may take it that throughout this book I am not adopting some absurdly high standard that would make life in half of England impossible. I'm not shocked because an iron foundry or a wool combing mill has little in common with an author's drawing-room or study. I have long known what kind of places men have to labour in. My standard may be rough and ready and somewhat uncertain, but you can assume it is a reasonable one. If I declare that Coketown is a horrible hole, I do not merely mean that it cannot be fitted with some private fairy tale Merry England of my own. I mean that it is a damned horrible hole, and I hope you'll take my word for it. I spent the better part of the 2 days staring at this black country. The first day was fine and fairly bright. I went from Birmingham through Smedic to Oldbury to Dudley, which seemed to me a fantastic place. You climb a hill, past innumerable grim works and unpleasant brick dwellings, and then suddenly a ridiculous terracotta music hall comes out of sight, perched on a steep roadside as if a giant had plucked it out of one of the neighbouring valleys and carelessly left it there. And above this music hall, its attraction this week was Parisian Follies, were the ruins of Dudley Castle. I climbed a steep little hillside and then smoked a pipe or two sitting by the remains of the keep. The view from there is colossal. On the Dudley side you look down across the roofs and steeply mounting streets and pointing factory chimneys. It looked as if a great slab of Birmingham had been torn away and then tilted up there at an angle of about 45 degrees. The view from the other side, roughly, I suppose, to the northeast, was even more impressive. There was the Black Country unrolled before you, like a smouldering carpet. You looked into an immense hollow of smoke and blurred buildings and factory chimneys. There seemed to be no end to it. In the vague middle, dominating everything, was an enormous round white tower, which afterwards I learned was a new gasometer. It looked bigger than anything else in sight, and as nothing had dimension that could be measured, it was any size that you imagined it to be. You could think of it without duly straining your fancy as the temple of some horrible new religion. The only sounds that arrived from this misty immensity below came from the tangle of railway lines that gleamed in the foreground of the scene, and these noises were so clear they might have been picked out and then amplified. There was the scream of the locomotive, there was the clanking of the bumped wagons, and there was the long pushing of the train gathering speed. I never remember hearing these railway sounds so clearly. Nothing else came from that enormous hollow. You could easily believe that there were no people down there. that the goods locomotive was probably the most playful inhabitant in the region. I was glad I didn't know the names of the towns down there in the smoke. I felt that I was not looking at this place and that place, but a metallic Midlands themselves, at a relief map of heavy industry, at another and greater exhibition of the 50s. And I assume he means the 1850s there. No doubt at all that the region had a sombre beauty of its own. I thought so, and then I thought so later, that when I had seen far more of its iron face lit with hell fire. But it was a beauty you could appreciate chiefly because you were not condemned to live there. If I could do what I liked with the whole country, I would keep a good tract of this region as it is now, to be stared at and wondered at. But I would find it difficult to ask any but a few curators to live in it. I descended into the vast smoky hollow and watched it turn itself into so many workshops, grimy rows of houses, pubs and picture theatres, yards filled with rusty metal, and great patches of waste ground. There was a cynical abundance of these patches of waste ground, which was shocking as raw sores and open wounds. In my own West Riding, industry of the grimmest and most uncompromising kind has long been allowed to work its will on the countryside. There, however, the countryside itself is grim and uncompromising. Sometimes the mills, the rows of little houses, the cobbled streets, all seem natural outcroppings of the Pennine Rock. Huddersfield, Rochdale, Cayley and Nelson may look grim, but the highlands that still separate them look even grimmer. But here in these Midlands, the countryside is mild and friendly. It's on the border of Arden itself. Industry has ravished it. Drunken storm troops have passed this way. There are signs of atrocities everywhere. The earth has been left gaping and bleeding, and what was once bright fields have been rummaged and raped into these dreadful patches of waste ground. And nothing I saw there, not even the slums, impressed me more painfully. It's going to have a slurp of coffee. It's a grim old picture he's giving us, isn't it? It's a very grim picture. Marriott says, hello from Arndale, first day of our quarantine. Scudo Camper says, not just camping, good to see you healthy. Thank you very much. Carl Townsend, good morning to you. Says, regarding your camp of our video, chemical toilet and a fold-up camping table. Sounds perfect. Morning, Lisa. Didn't hear my alert go off. Oh, sorry. Roger Jones, morning. Camper car, silver bubble wrap, as used behind the radiator to cut out the window for blackout and insulation. Oh, good idea. So where are you tonight? Tonight we're in the Black Country. So let's get back to a little bit of that. The places I saw had names, but these names were merely so much alliteration. Wolverhampton, Wednesbury, Wednesfield, Willenhall, Walsall. You could call them all wilderness, and have done with it. I never knew where one ended and another began. I remember noticing in Wolverhampton, after half an hour of dingy higgledy-piggledy, the new building of Midlands County Dairy, white and trim, with immense windows, and thinking how alien it looked, like an outpost of a new civilization. I remember arriving at the very end of the earth, where the land appeared to have been uprooted by a giant pig, and where there were cottages so small and odd that they must have been built for gnomes. And this end of the earth was called Gornal, and there were women returning home from brickworks who wore caps and shawls. The shawls were like those that the weavers used to wear in my town, but our women had always worn their shawls over their heads. Here, however, they wore caps as well, and looked as outlandish as the place they lived in. Afterwards I ran right through the Black Country and came out the other end, almost within sight of the potteries. On the way back, somewhere between Stafford and Rugeley, I came to a bit of heath country, glowing with autumn, that was as pleasant as you could wish. The sun went down. It was dark, long before I got back to Birmingham. The ravished waste ground, the miserable houses, the muddle of dirty brick, the whole battlefield of industry sank down and disappeared, and in their places appeared mysterious red gleams of fire and a pretty tracery of lights, so that I was happier staring about me than I had been all day. My second day there was a Sunday, and in foul weather. Sometimes the raw fog dripped, sometimes the cold rain steamed, but throughout it was thick and wet and chilled. I lunched in one of the smaller towns with a man in the metal trade. There were several black country businessmen there, large, hearty fellows, sturdy eaters and drinkers. There'd been a sudden flurry of business in the metal trade, and my friend was going back to his office and warehouse in West Bromwich after lunch. I went with him, and on my way was shown, among other things, the last dairy farm in the district. It stood there, surrounded for miles by grim paraphernalia of industrialism. I had only a glimpse of it, a solitary surviving farmhouse in the wet fog, with a few ghostly fields on either side. My friend's warehouse was in, shall we say, Rusty Lane, West Bromwich. He keeps sheets of steel there, and no doubt any place is good enough to keep sheets of steel in, but I do not think I could ever let a sheet of steel stay long in Rusty Lane. I have never seen such a picture of grimy desolation as that street offered me. If you put it brick for brick into a novel, people would not accept it, would condemn you as a caricaturist, and talk about Dickens. The whole neighbourhood is mean and squalid, but this particular street seemed the worst of all. It wouldn't matter very much, though it would matter, if only metal were kept there. But it happens that people live there. Children are born there and grow up there. I saw some of them. I was being shown one of the warehouses where steel plates were stacked in the chill gloom, and we heard a bang and rattle on the roof. The boys, it seems, were throwing stones again. They were always throwing stones at the roof. We went out to find them, but only found 3 frightened little girls who looked at us with round eyes and wet, smudgy faces. No, they hadn't done it. The boys had done it, and the boys had just run away. Where they could run to, I cannot imagine. They need not have run away from me, because I wouldn't blame them if they threw stones and smashed every pane of glass for miles. Nobody can blame them if they grow up to smash everything that can be smashed. There ought to be no more of these lunches and dinners at political and financial and by industrial gentlemen who congratulate one another until something is done about Rusty Lane and West Bromwich. While they still exist in their present foul shape, it is idle to congratulate ourselves about anything. They make the whole pomp of government here a miserable farce. The Crown, Lords and Commons are the Crown, Lords and Commons are the Crown, Lords and Commons, I've read that wrong. The Crown, Lords and Commons are the Crown, Lords and Commons of Rusty Lane, West Bromwich. In the heart of the great empire in which the sun never sets, in the land of hope and glory, mother of the free, is Rusty Lane, West Bromwich. What do they know of England who only England know? The answer must be Rusty Lane, West Bromwich. And if there is another economic conference, let it meet there in one of the warehouses to be fed with bread and margarine and slabs of brawn. The delegates have seen one England, Mayfair in the season. Let them see another England next time, West Bromwich, out of season, out of all seasons, except the winter of our discontent. I don't think he was very impressed with West Bromwich, Rusty Lane, West Bromwich, and it must have been very grim. And of course, that's what people were working in the Black Country, with all the coal fires burning and the chimneys pouring out the smoke. It must have been quite grim. How are we doing out there? Roger Jones, morning. Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, read that. Yu, is it? Rami Boo says, for us un-English, where is the Black Country? It's in the Midlands. It's in the West Midlands, really. If you look at a map and you find Birmingham, it's just north and slightly to the west of Birmingham. It's sort of in that middle bit. You've got the potteries above that, like Staffordshire, and then to the right you've got places like Leicester and Nottingham. Nikki Jess, good morning, everyone. Good morning to you. Mike Stevens, it was called the Black Country because the buildings were coated in a black grime from smoke of the industrial outpourings. That's right. And Barry Phillips says, my mother worked at the Midland Counties Dairy in Wolverhampton, so aptly described. How fascinating. Did you tell us the name of the tea we're drinking tonight? Yes, of course it's morning where I am. It's Darjeeling Earl Grey, or Earl Grey with Darjeeling tea. And obviously it's got a bit of bergamot and what have you. Where there's muck, there's brass, says Graham Roffey. Philip Cracknell, hello. What I love, and I've found this now doing these readings for about a week, is just as Barry Phillips has said there, I'm reading this book set 1933, and there he talks about the Midlands County Dairy, and somebody has a connection with it. That's just so awesome. Isn't that amazing? I love it. Google it. They have a big coal seam there. Yeah. Seems they do. Right, we're on chapter 5 now. I'm going to read a bit from chapter 5. To Leicester and Nottingham. So he didn't have much to say about the Black Country, really, other than it was a bit grimy and a lot grimy and a lot dingy and dismal. And I do love his dour descriptions. I do find that really good. Right, chapter 5. Let's see what we get with this. On my original route, my next stop after the Black Country was the Potteries. I was within a few miles of them, and I was exploring the country. Sorry, I've read that wrong. I was within a few miles of them when I was exploring the country north of Birmingham. But I chanced to notice that Nottingham was holding its annual fair, the famous Goose Fair, at the following weekend. And as I had promised myself for years to visit this fair, I decided to postpone the Potteries and make for Nottingham. This meant going to Leicester first, for I felt that the two places must be taken together. They are neighbours and they are rivals, with much in common and yet oddly different. It would not do to go to the Potteries and then merely make a dash to Nottingham for the fair, so I changed my itinerary and took a north-easterly route out of Birmingham. This was my third visit to Leicester. My first was in 1916, when I arrived there horizontally and remained for weeks in a bed patient in a military hospital at North Evington. I saw very little of the town during that visit, for North Evington is a suburb, and I could not get about much. All I remember is that Leicester folk were very kind to us, and that, unfortunately for me, they were rather too fond of singing to the bed patients, with the result that one or another of their blushing sopranos sang "When You Come Home, Dear," every afternoon in my ward, from which I could not stir. My second visit was 11 or 12 years afterwards, when I spent a week or two mooching about the Midlands before writing The Good Companions. That's one of his famous novels. It was sleety weather, the worst kind of weather for visits to strange towns. I stayed in a little red brick hotel that was very dull and uncomfortable, and I can see myself now returning to its cold, inhuman little bedroom and having a glum bout of reading there. I remember going to 2 music halls, one good and the other bad. It seemed to me then a dull town. That is all that remains to me that's all that remains to me from my second visit to Leicester. This third time I was luckier. To begin with, the weather was brighter, quite dry and fairly bright. The sun was warming the famous hunting country, the very heart of the shires, as I passed through it. I didn't break my journey to have another look at Market Harborough. Hunting country and hunting people have their own literature, and I have no wish to add to it. I have only now and again met hunting people, and I do not understand them. Men and women whose whole lives are organised in order that they may ride in pursuit of stray foxes 2 or 3 days a week, who risk their necks for a vermin's brush, who will deny themselves this and that to spend money on packs of hounds, who spare no pains to turn themselves into 20th century oafs, are past my comprehension. All I ask is that they should not pretend to be solemnly doing their duty, when in reality they are indulging and enjoying themselves. The fox hunter who begins mumbling excuses, who tells you that he hunts to rid the countryside of foxes, that hunting is valuable because it improves the breed of horses, i.e. hunters, is a contemptible fellow. But I am prepared to respect the hunting man who looks you straight in the eye and declares in downright fashion, "I like hunting because I like it. Hunting is the most glorious sport in the world, and I live for it. It may be exaggerant, cruel, antisocial, anything you like, but I don't give a damn. As long as society allows me to hunt, I shall hunt. Halloo!" But I have not met him yet. There is a fair chance that I shall, however, because people tell me that the sport is taking on a new lease of life, in spite of the shortage of money. More and more people are hunting, or wanting to hunt, just as more and more people are beginning to ride again. The horse, as a mere beast of burden, may be at the end of its days, but as a sporting companion, he is starting life all over again. It will be some time yet before these little rolling hills of Leicestershire forget the pounding of hooves. The sun had not set when I came into Leicester itself, which looked quite bright and new. In his Guide to England, Mr. Muirhead, in his comfortable fashion, calls it a busy and cheerful industrial place, for the most part built of red brick. And for some hours after I arrived, I found it impossible to improve upon that description, and difficulty even to amplify it. The citizens, who are proud of the place, boast that it is one of the cleanest manufacturing towns in this country, and they're quite right, it is. They also boast that it has a very enterprising town council, and I have no doubt that it has. Notice the fire station. It is comparatively prosperous. You feel almost at once that it is a very worthy borough, and that is deservedly getting on in the world. But it is hard to believe that anything much has happened here. Actually, it's very old, and offers you a very rum-mixed list of historical associations. For example, King Lear and his daughter lived here, if they ever lived anywhere. It is Simon de Montfort's town. The broken Cardinal Wolsey came here to die, and has now acquired an immortality by having his name stamped on thousands of bales of stockings and underclothes. John Bunyan saw a siege here during the Civil War, and among its 19th century citizens was the original Thomas Cook, who ran his first little excursion out of Leicester Station. But somehow you do not believe in all these goings-on. The town seems to have no atmosphere of its own. I felt I was quite ready to praise it, but was glad to think that I didn't live in it. There are many worse places I would rather live. It seemed to me to lack character, to be busy and cheerful and industrial and built of red brick, but nothing else. Such was my immediate impression. I spent my first evening walking about the centre of the town, which is neither dignified nor very extensive, indeed hardly worthy of any excellent residential quarters outside of it. I wanted some travelling slippers. The first shop I went in... slippers. I wanted some travelling slippers. The first shop I went into had none at all. The second shop could only offer me 3 pairs to choose from. Yet Leicester itself is in the boot and shoe trade. There was a large open market, well lighted with electricity, but though it was doing good business in everything from tablecloths to cough mixture, it was not amusing. Indeed, I found nothing amusing in these streets. It would not be difficult to invent something amusing for them, but I am here to tell the truth. Possibly I may not have been in the right frame of mind to discover anything amusing, but I suspect it was chiefly the town's fault. I returned to my hotel for dinner. Outside, this hotel looked like a large go-ahead congregational chapel circa 1900, with its entrance compared unfavourably with that of most underground stations. But inside, in parts, it was better. The basement was very gay and modern, with a grill room, food not bad, and a cocktail bar complete with white-coated barmen, salted almonds, and price lists shaped like cocktail shakers. There was a brisk demand for cocktails, mostly double ones too, while I was there, and not from the guests in the hotel, but mostly, I imagine, from young businessmen and their wives and girlfriends. I've noticed before that the more dashing persons of both sexes in provincial towns have a passion for cocktails and seems to be ready to drink them at any time. The cocktail is no longer an aperitif, which is what it was designed to be, but a drink for all hours. The taverns offer you cocktails in bottles of all sizes. Perhaps very soon, as the wave of fashion slowly travels outward and enlarges itself, all the landlords of country ale-houses and the farmers will be at it, rattling cocktail shakers and adding dashes of absinthe and spearing olives, by which time the tide of sherry will have reached the larger provincial towns from London. These waves of fashion, rising in Berkeley Square and then slowly travelling out until the last ebb. These waves of fashion, rising in Berkeley Square and then slowly travelling out until at last they ebb and dwindle into semi-detached villas outside Newcastle and farmhouses in Devonshire, are very curious and instructive, and are particularly noticeable in the matter of furniture and decoration. Now that fashionable persons collect the glass ornaments of a mid-Victorian period, the very ornaments that the smarter housewives in the provinces were banishing to a lumber room when I was a small boy, we have gone round in full circle. Somebody ought to write a cavalcade of these travelling fashions. During dinner, I examined the 2 local papers to see how I could spend my evening. A Leicester man had boasted to me that the town was now the chief sporting centre of the provinces, being able to offer you good examples of every sport and notably boxing. But on this particular occasion it had no sport to offer. So I asked the waiter, who was a Leicester lad, born and bred, but who had somehow contrived to give himself a foreign look — he'll probably go far, that boy — where I could go and see Leicester enjoying itself of an evening, and he suggested a certain dance hall which was having one of its popular nights. So I went there, paying 1 and 6pence to go in, and 3pence to leave my hat and overcoat in the cloakroom. The hall itself, which had a balcony all round, was a large floor and with a lighting equipment superior to that of most London hotels and supper dancing places, and it was quite good. It could have comfortably entertained 6 times as many dancers as were there. Most of the patrons were young, and they were nearly as many boys as girls. They seemed to dance very well, foxtrots, quick-steps, rumbas, waltzes, and in much more reserved and dignified fashion than their social superiors in the West End. They were, I imagine, mostly factory hands, and apart from the occasional guffawing from a group of lads, they were quiet and serious, as sedately intent on their steps as a conference of dancing teachers. I felt an intruder and left after a quarter of an hour or so, only to discover that the music hall that I had formerly seen had a robust show was now given up. The music hall that I had formerly seen a good. I will do that again. I felt an intruder and left after a quarter of an hour or so, only to discover the music hall where I had formerly seen a good robust show was now given up to Constance Bennett. In the whole of Leicester that night there was only one performance being given by living players in a touring musical company. In a town in which nearly 250,000 people, not without intelligence or money, this is not good enough. Soon we shall be as badly off as America, where I would find myself in large cities that had not a single living actor performing in them. Nothing but films, films, films. There a whole generation has grown up that associates entertainment with moving pictures and with nothing else, and I am not sure that as much as could be said for this country. I rather like films, but not in my capacity as an inquiring traveller. They don't offer you any knowledge of the town. They don't offer you any... I've lost my space. They do not offer you any knowledge of the town you're visiting, only an escape from it. Once inside a picture house, you might be anywhere from Iowa City to Preston. A theatre or music hall not only has real performers, but also has real audiences, and so you can tell something about the local people who come alive and are not merely deeper shadows in the murk. This is yet another reason for deploring the growing scarcity of proper theatres. So I walked around the clock tower once again, and then went back upstairs to the lounge of my hotel, which was now filling up with commercial travellers, who sat in groups of 3 and 4 at little tables, convivial with Worthington and the White Horse. At one of the tables were 3 women, one middle-aged and the other 2 young, the only women present, and they seemed to be busy talking shop and were apparently commercial travellers too, or were buyers of some kind. I ought to have found out exactly what they were, for obviously they were brisk women of business, but I lacked the courage. Somebody ought to write a book about the newer occupations, among which, I take it, female commercial travelling will have a place. Then to bed, where I slept wretchedly, as I generally do the first night in these hotels. I have to write about what happens during the day, but what happens during the day is a mere flash, a fleeting gleam of sane daylight, compared with the stifling epics of dark dream and miserable waking and reawaking that make up one of these bad nights. And there I'm going to pause until tomorrow. Interesting. I'm enjoying reading this book. I hope you're enjoying it. Audrey Forbes says, my parents ran a newsagent opposite the Midlands Counties dairy. Oh, well, there you go. Look at that. There was big windows of the dairy, and you could see the bottles of milk going by on a conveyor belt. It's a McDonald's now. Ha! Blimey. Philip Cracknell says, what did Oscar Wilde say? The English country gentleman galloping after the fox, the unspeakable in full pursuit of the uneatable. Yes, very, very good. I like that. Morton Lewis. Buenos dias. My gran came from Ashby-le-Zeus, near Leicester. I passed Ashby, or been through Ashby-le-Zeus. It's famous now for Richard the Turd. Yes. Judith. It's Darjeeling tea, Ramiboo. Steely Chase, here and there. Is that all you say, Steely Chase? Here and there? That's all I ever see you say. Nigel Sadler with Earl Grey. Yes, I believe that's what he said, Judith. It's a mixture of cardamom. Cardamom? I thought it was bergamot. Carl Townsend, on another walk, you could always take a look at the very old house located in Hall Close, which is down Hall Avenue, off Offington Avenue, possibly 200 years old. I'll look that up. Bergamont, says you. Yes, that's what I thought. I am sure the movie studios came into South California in those days, New York, New Jersey, where there are still plenty of local actors, particularly in New York City. Thank you, Richard, says Morton. There we go. I just find it's a fascinating glimpse into the past. And only a lifetime, 90 years. If we're lucky, we can live 90 years, if we manage to get through all of this. And it would be amazing to, people born or as children in the 30s, looking back, has seen so many changes. And the pace of life has changed so dramatically. And of course, with gadgets and electronics and all of that, it is quite an amazing amount of change. And often, because we're getting more used to this rapid speed of change, we don't notice the change. And yet we remember when CDs came in as the thing that was to revolutionize vinyl, which we'd had for donkey's years, and that was a fleeting thing. And now we don't keep music in a solid form anymore. I mean, we do have a few CDs and things, of course, but pretty much MP3s. And it seems now we don't even keep those MP3s on our own devices. We stream them. And we just assume that we can go to a music streaming service and there it is. We don't even have it. So if that streaming service decides to boot you out, you can't have it. Whereas having the physical vinyl or a CD or a cassette tape, there was something about you had complete, you had complete independence, and it was yours. So yeah, it's so different, so difficult. Sorry, I remembered something. Spund in the end, says Lisa. Bergamot definitely sounds better. Yeah, I'm sure Earl Grey is bergamot stuff. Anyway, that's that. I went out on my bicycle this morning, which I extracted from the shed yesterday and pumped the tyres up. I went out on there earlier this morning and I've put together some vague video. It's a bit of an experiment to see how it works. I have yet to edit it, so I'm going to go and do that now. It'll be out this afternoon. The other thing is, as this lockdown continues and I start to run out of places and things to do, I may have to do more housebound videos and do occasional walks. I hope that's going to be acceptable, but it's going to be tricky to get further afield, of course. And while there's relatively interesting things that one can do, there's only a certain number of them, I guess. Rami Boo says, did I mention it's 2 a.m. here? No, you didn't mention that, but I assumed it was evening where you were, but the rest of us in the UK, it is morning. I think my thumbs went to sleep already. I can't seem to type. You better go to sleep, Lisa, and have a nice doze. I am going to make a fresh cup of tea because this is all cold now, and get on and do some editing. Steely Chase says, nay, I also said keep it up. Oh, right, okay. Love your work. It's... Oh, Seeley. I beg your pardon. It's Seeley Chase, not Steely Chase. Yes, sorry. I often misread. I probably got some dyslexia, I think. Because I've only got one eye, and I'm not using this as a huge excuse, but because I've only got the one eye, and I'm looking at the text on a television screen as opposed to a computer screen. If I show you what I'm looking at. So it's not crystally sharp. That's what I'm looking at in my little makeshift studio. So you're on the left there to me. I guess it's on the left as you look at it as well. And And there's the camera, and there's the microphone and computer, which runs everything. But because I'm reading that, I often get the word wrong, and then of course it stays stuck in my brain, and I keep repeating it. So I do apologise. I didn't mean to. Yeah, Seeley Chase. And where are you, Seeley Chase? It's 2 a.m. here, so you're obviously in somewhere like America. Andy Stacey says, when Big Brother is on, loads of people watch them and sleep. So I watch everything you do. Is Big Brother still on? I thought that had finished years ago. I thought that was so last century, whenever it was. Ramaboo says ORWA or CA. Don't know what you mean by that. Are they states? Are they American states? Oregon? I don't know what WA is. Washington, is it? And CA? No, I'm not too familiar with the acronyms. California and Southern. There we go. Oh, thank you very much. And have you got nice weather out there? I bet you've got lovely weather out there. We have an overcast day. It's a bit brighter than when I went out this morning, so it's not so bad. It's a bit mild here. But anyway, this is not getting anything done. Thank you so much for watching, and I do appreciate you coming along. I will be reading Washington. Yes, Washington. Yeah, I don't know what CA is. What's CA? California. Of course it is. Yeah. Silly. Should have worked that out, really. Should have worked that out. Anyway, I'll be back again this evening live to do another Vogue show at 8 o'clock British summertime. I don't know how that translates to where you are, of course. And then again tomorrow morning, I will be same sort of time, 9:30, doing the next bit of JB Priestley, just to help us get through this crisis, and hopefully able to produce 2 bits of video content, which will go up, one in the morning and one after lunch. But it may be that I go back to doing just 1 video a day because of the limitations that we are under at the moment. It's the nicest weather here before it gets hot. Yes. And are you in, I guess you're in lockdown as well, presumably. So even though it's nice, I guess you can't get out, which is a bummer. Nigel Sadler says it's national clapping of the... Oh, yes, that's right. I forgot about that. So the Vogue show will be on at 8:10. We'll go out and do our clapping and wish the National Health Service and all the key workers and also the supermarket people, who I think actually also should be recognised for keeping the food places open, but because you get a number of key workers like bus drivers and train drivers and people like that, but mostly they can do that and be relatively isolated. It's very difficult for the supermarket staff, who are adapting everything they do to try and keep everything safe, and are very much at the mercy of any Tom, Dick and Harry who decides to come in, whether they have symptoms or not. And you can understand people are desperate to get food, and if they are got some mild symptoms, and they may not have any friends or family or anybody to help them, it is likely that they will go and venture out, and so it's quite risky, I think, for them. To the grocery store. Yes, you're in lockdown. The only place you can go is the grocery store. Every Thursday, 8 p.m, the national and other key workers support. Yes, I heard that. That's going to be interesting, because sadly, I think that as much as everybody loves the NHS, it will wane. Whereas it was fantastic. Unfortunately, I was setting up the show and I didn't manage to do it live. I did a sort of clap on the show to them. I think that while it's a very good suggestion that we support them, I think it will look bad if it wanes. And I think over time it will wane, not because people don't want to support them, but I just think most people are a little bit complacent. We all get a bit complacent. Audrey Forbes, most enjoyable. Thanks, Richard. Ramy Boo says it's been raining about the last 5 days, so can't go piddle around my garden. Fair enough. You have to use the toilet like everybody else. You should somehow include that in the show. Oh, yeah. Well, people won't be watching. I think people will be at their windows and at their doors, and I think it's more respectful not to try and broadcast whilst they're doing that. I think people will want to do that, and then once they've done that, they can slowly group up. And actually, it makes no difference to me. But I'm going to try and make tonight's show more succinct and shorter because they've been stretching to an hour and a half, which is quite a lot. Somebody sent me. Steely says, sorry, I'm calling you Steely again. Seeley Chase says dog walks and such like with the bike. Somebody sent me. I think it was Mike Dixon. Or no, I joked in the Vogue show last night that if you want to avoid the police and detection of being asked why you're out, is that you could get a stick with a white fluffy cushion, and from above or from a drone, it looked like you're walking a dog, and you could hold that out in front of you. And then somebody, I forget who sent this, and I hadn't read the whole article, but I just read the headline. Somebody in Madrid, where they're not allowed out, I think they're allowed out to walk their dogs, and that's all it is. Somebody was walking in their dressing gown, walking their toy dog, just so they could get out. And I just thought, that's enterprising. I know there's a crisis. I know it's risky. And I know people are dying. But at the same time, there's got to be something to make your life worth living. Otherwise, it is just so bleak. Anyway, on that note, I know you were going to read that and like that. Ramy says, I knew you were going to read that like that. Oh, yeah. That's why you wrote it. That's why you put piddle. Anyway, I must go get on and do some other stuff. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. I'll catch up with you later. Till next time. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.